This special two-part episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by Tempo by Hilton Times Square. Hey, guess what? The Club World Cup final, it's in New York on July 13th. And we're going to be there because Real Madrid is going to be in the final. We're counting on it. In fact, we've already confirmed our podcast in New York on July 12th, which will be hosted at Tempo by Hilton Times Square in the very same room that you see on the screen right now. The stylish hotel is in Times Square, steps from restaurants, shops, and Broadway theaters, Central Park, Radio City Music Hall, Rockefeller Center, and Grand Central Station are within 1 mile. Their outdoor terrace overlooks the heart of the city. The restaurant also offers iconic NYC views. Enjoy the 24-hour fitness center and book your stay at Temple by Hilton Times Square for the Club World Cup final. A link to RSVP to our podcast on July 12th is in the show notes. Also, shout out to moji-mates.com. Moji Mates, head on over to moji-mates.com. Use code LEGENDS for 25% off, and they are continuing their theme of legends. Obviously, Luka Modric is leaving Real Madrid, so you want to stock up on Luka Modric shirts. They just released Guti and Redondo, and as you can see, there are so many legends to choose from. Head on over to moji-mates.com and use code LEGENDS for 25% off. And finally, our presenting sponsor, TAFC Academy. Head on over to tacsports.ca if you're in Toronto. They got the best academy, the best coaching, the best facilities in Toronto. So if you got kids in Toronto, make sure you sign your kids up for the summer camps in particular. They got swimming camps, basketball camps, soccer camps, and beyond. Go to tacsports.ca if you're in Toronto. And with that all being said, we got a big episode coming today because we got Adrian Sousa of Rabona TV coming on to help me scout out Alvaro Carreras. And I just want to fire off some quick thoughts about Xabi Alonso and his presentation today. So let's get to it. Big day. Here we go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Big day, busy day over on managingmadrid.com, and you can catch up all of the latest news plus a ton of analysis on the website. We got everything covered from Xabi Alonso and Florentino Perez's quotes today from the presentation, and we got analysis on Nico Paz's season at Como from Mehdi Hassan. He also wrote a Xabi Alonso article, which is pinned on the website right now. We got Yash Thakur putting up a Luka Modric analysis piece, and the annual Castilla season review from Sam Sharp, which is over 6,000 words. That is also pinned on managingmadrid.com. So if you guys are listeners of the podcast, but you don't consume the written content, you should. If you want up-to-date analysis, but also the latest news, that's all on the website. And today's episode is primarily Alvaro Carreras focus, but I did want to throw in some thoughts here about Xabi Alonso. And as you guys know, a friend of the show, Adrian Sousa of Rabona TV, he's going to help me break down the Alvaro Carreras scouting report, which at the time of this recording is not official, but reputable reports in Spain from the big publications are saying it is imminent and it could be done in the next few days or so. So we have it prepared and ready to go for you guys just in case. Enjoy it. This morning, some thoughts from Xabi Alonso's presentation. I got to say, it was heartwarming to see the whole thing. If you look at Real Madrid's coaching appointments in the last few years, they've hit a trend. Zinedine Zidane, Carlo Ancelotti, Xabi Alonso, these are the last three managers that Real Madrid are brought in. How would I describe these three figures? Just going to fire off some words that come to mind. Class, dignity, respect, humility. I think these figures are so important at Real Madrid because they bring calm to the club. They bring calm to the dressing room. This is a club that, as far as I have been living, has been filled with distractions and drama and media hit pieces, and those really come out in full force when things are not going well at the club, and that happened a lot this last season. And to have figures like Ancelotti and Zidane and Xabi Alonso, I think is important because you need players and managers who come in and command respect. And Xabi Alonso will walk in and, I don't know if demand respect is the right word, because that in itself is a bit of a oxymoron. Like, you don't just come in and demand respect, you kind of come in and earn it. But Xabi Alonso naturally does command respect without really trying because he's Xabi Alonso. He's well respected in footballing circles. He was a cerebral player. He is a cerebral manager and always connected well with his teammates and coaches, has a great resume, has basically been on a pilgrimage the last few years. Everything from his last stint at Bayern as a player under Pep to going through the process of coaching Juvenil A, Real Sociedad B, Bayer Leverkusen, and now the dream, which is Real Madrid. And I think the cool and unique thing about Xabi Alonso is that, again, just to reiterate this point, and I feel like a broken record, but he has the man manager and the tactical side of things down. And one weird rhetoric that I saw come out of, I had a clip that went viral recently on a few different social media platforms, and on Instagram, I get notifications on the comments. And I had mentioned that, Rams haven't had a coach like this in years. And some people were saying, like, well, we had Lopetegui and Benitez and it didn't work. And I was just shocked that that was a comparison. Like, there is a difference between people who are tacticians and those who are tacticians plus get the buy-in collective effort. With Xabi Alonso, like, labeling him as a tactician is a disservice. Lopetegui and Benitez are nothing like Xabi Alonso. Xabi Alonso has both tacticians, the tactical side of things down, but also the man management side of things. And that's going to be super important because this is not just a team, in the mid-table of some random country. This is the elite, 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 elite creme de la creme of football, with the best players in the world and players that need a collective system to buy into. And that's where, look, I'm not going to sit here and say this is a sure thing. Xabi Alonso is going to go and dominate with this team and it's going to be lights out. History is already made. Of course not. It's like Florentino Perez said today, this is a huge challenge for Xabi Alonso. He's going to come and he's got a lot to do. Look at all the things that went wrong uh, last season. This season, last season, I'm not sure. I guess with the Club World Cup, this is technically part of this season. I'm not sure, but you get what I'm saying. So he's got a big task. So just some thoughts on the presser. I thought it was really wholesome to see him sitting through the presentation and watching his reaction to being shown the video of his Real Madrid memories. And just, it was so cool to see him, basically his smile peaked at the moment where he was watching himself run down famously from the stands in 2014 in Lisbon to celebrate Sergio Ramos's header. And when he goes up to speak, it just felt right. I don't know how else to put it. It felt right. It felt like he was home. It felt like this is where he belongs. Um, he's a class act, and he said all the right things. And I guess, one of the theme, and I didn't attend the press conference today, I would have asked similar questions to what was already asked of him, which was, how are you going to play next season? How are you going to integrate Vinny and Mbappe together better than, they they were able to integrate themselves this season? 3 at the back, 4 at the back, etc. And, he didn't reveal much. I mean, I think if I were to, like, just pull out some of the quotes that did stand out, he basically spent and prioritized a lot of time to show respect to Carlo Ancelotti, one of his mentors, to Florentino Perez for bringing him in, to Luka Modric, who was a legend that he would have liked to have probably coached a little bit longer, but is, honored to be, coaching him for the Club World Cup at least. That he's going to have a conversation with Rodrigo like he will with every player, and that Rodrigo is a Real Madrid player and he's spectacular. He's going to be an important player next season. That he has ideas on how to integrate Vinicius and Mbappe, and he's going to have those conversations. That he wants fans to watch Real Madrid and be impressed with the football they play, which was, a small part of it, but an interesting and standout part of it today. Just looking at the press conference quotes. The other thing was that he spoke about Bellingham's role and that he sees Bellingham as a midfielder. In some ways, that's a little bit vague because a midfielder could mean an 8 or a 6 or a 10. Obviously, I don't see him as a 6, but an 8 or a 10. We'll see how Xabi uses Bellingham next year. That's a really, really interesting dynamic that I'm looking forward to seeing. And beyond that, he was not too descriptive with how his tactical approach is going to come next season. And he mentioned that it's important to be versatile and have different ways of playing, which is obviously a prerequisite at Real Madrid because you need to be able to be adaptable tactically. And that adaptability has made Real Madrid the most successful team in the history of the sport. So I'm looking forward to the Xabi Alonso era. It's nice to have kind of like ending this horrible season on a high. And then it's not like this is a club that has moral victories or moral trophies, but given that this season really was disastrous and painstaking, and as you guys know, what we were on therapy podcast number 800 million, right? So to end on a note where we get to have proper tributes for three legends, end on a note where we can say congratulations to Kylian Mbappe for winning the Pichichi and the Golden Boot. And on a note where we already have announced Dean Howson and Xabi Alonso, and then we're going to announce Trent and then probably Carreras. Appropriate reactions. Thankful for an incredible era. Sad that it's over, but grateful to have witnessed it and ushering in a new era, which I'm excited about, and the club has reacted appropriately. Finally, some notes on Alvaro Carreras before we bring in Adrian Sousa for part 2. And I know we're going to talk about him with Adrian, but I thought I would share this. I did a deep dive on Alvaro Carreras the past few days. And I spoke, and I wish I could give him credit, but I'm not allowed to, because he is a scout working for one of the biggest clubs in Europe. And he's not really allowed to. I actually, kind of extended him on the podcast, and he's been on the podcast before. So if you were an OG listener years ago, you might guess who this person is, but he used to be pretty well voiced on Twitter, but then he got a big scouting job with one of the big clubs in Europe. So kind of had to remain anonymous. But he gave me a massive scouting report via a WhatsApp note, which lasted 8 minutes on Alvaro Carreras. And I just took bullet point notes from his scouting report. This is a guy I trust, a brilliant football brain. So I'm going to read off the bullet points on Alvaro Carreras from this scouting report. Great crossing technique, well-rounded, passing and defense has improved. He's not as athletic compared to the elite 10% of fullbacks. Not the best ball carrier, an actively good build-up player. Not the best 1v1 attacker, but my personal opinion on that is that not necessarily the worst thing, given that you already have elite 1v1 attackers in Vinny and Mbappe on that side. Positional defending plus back post defending more than makes up for his 1v1 defending, which is still developing. The eye test on his crossing ability is good, but he is not even close analytically to elite attacking fullbacks. He's nice, quote unquote, balancing point to Trent Alexander-Arnold on the other side. He knows when to step and when to stay on defense. And finally, he is a good fit. So let's dive into it a little bit deeper with Adrian of Rabona TV. Coming right up. Welcome, everyone, to part 2 of the Managing Madrid podcast. It is May 26th that we're recording this shortly after Xabi Alonso's presentation. And as you guys know, this is the much anticipated Alvaro Carreras scouting report. And I can't think of anyone on earth to help me do this other than Adrian Sousa of Rabona TV, friend of the show, does great work, needs no introduction, but just in case, his channel, Rabona TV, is off the charts. It absolutely is one of the pioneers of YouTube football analysis. So, Adrian, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate the praise of being one of the best on earth. Maybe Bruno Lage, our coach, could give you a better idea. Maybe. But I'll do my best to sort of match up to that.
Listen, you obviously are a specialist in terms of football analysis and you cover everyone, but this one, it particularly hits home for you because you are also a Benfica supporter. So, someone who watches Carreras every week, that sounds like a phenomenal guest to have. A lot of, I think, Real Madrid fans are on the fence on this one because on one hand, they see the Lamine Yamal player, the Lamine Yamal, I guess, 1v1 comps on YouTube because there were so many games against Barca this season. I think he played all but one of them. And then others are skeptical because, since we were linked with Carreras, there are people who are tuning in to just run-of-the-mill Benfica games in the league. And it's like, okay, this is the guy. So hopefully you will help us find the balance. So I wanted to ask you, first and foremost, when he arrived on loan, what were your expectations of him and how did he meet those expectations?
So back when he arrived, I think that I had relatively high expectations simply because of the two teams that he had been associated with in the past. Manchester United. I mean, granted, that doesn't say much this season or maybe the last couple of seasons, of course, given their struggles, but also, being a Real Madrid academy player. And then he went and I can never remember the team he went to in the championship where he was sort of their player of the year, that he was voted there. So I thought that he would be a good option. And the fullback positions are constantly positions where we kind of struggle with, bar having a Grimaldo or a right back, but those guys usually don't last long and get picked off, which might happen again. So he came in and you could tell that he was a little bit, I don't know if he was shaken a little bit, but he looked a little bit shaky defensively. He looked definitely, which is what he is, which is a winger converted to a fullback. So the defensive side of his game was looking a little bit shaky, but you could see that there was something to him, that he had this kind of potential that, clearly these other clubs saw in him. And clearly United still wanted the option to bring him back because they had the buyback and the sell-on fee and all these things. They made it very difficult for us to get him permanently. And as the season progressed, towards the end of the season, you saw him start to get many more opportunities because for some reason, Roger Schmidt didn't want to give him opportunities early. It was very, very difficult for him to get many of them. There was one game, especially, I think it was against a French team that we played in Europa League. I can't remember the name. They wear purple. Again, I'm forgetting all these names. I don't know what's wrong with me, but where he looked really bad defensively, really, really bad. His passing was wayward. He just looked like, okay, I don't know if we're going to end up keeping this guy. I don't know if this is the right sort of call. But then as this season has gone on, with Roger Schmidt leaving at the beginning, Bruno Lage coming in, Bruno Lage is kind of known for sort of blooding in these younger players and getting great performances out of them, as he did with Florentino in the past, as he did with João Felix in the past, all these kinds of guys. Alvaro Carreras started to play really, really well. And he started to progress to a point where he is now, where this entire season, when you look back on the totality of it, he's probably our most consistent and top performer as a whole on the team. I know Evangelos Pavlidis really caught fire in 2025, started scoring goals and really found himself. But overall, if you look from start to finish, Carreras is probably the guy who's been our most important player. I definitely think, as you were saying, people tuning in towards the end of the season and being kind of like iffy on him. it looks like he was torched, like he was just spent physically towards the end of the season. I saw it against Sporting yesterday in the cup final where he'd make these runs forward and then it looked like he was just laboring to get back. So he looks like he is physically just depleted at this time, but I can attest he was very good throughout the entirety of the season prior to this.
Would you? I mean, he's not old, obviously. He's still in his early 20s. He's also not like a teenager or anything. Would you say he's a bit of a how do I put this? Maybe a late bloomer, which is a weird thing to say about someone in their young 20s. But this is what I mean. Like in our last two signings, Carreras, according to reports in Spain, will be made official in the next few days. Dean Howson, who we were linked with throughout the season and finally officially signed. Both of these guys, they came on the radar relatively recently. Howson was a guy who barely played at Roma, then went over to Bournemouth, and it took a few injuries for him to crack the starting lineup. And then ever since then, he's been great. With Carreras, obviously, like even though he was part of the Real Madrid Academy at one point, we really hadn't heard about him in years. And then even when they were playing against Barca in those duels against Lamine Yamal, even still, like it wasn't really something that Real Madrid fans thought about. And then now, in the last few months, it's accelerated a little bit. Do you think it's fair to say that Carreras kind of, in the last year or so, put himself on the map and has progressed really dramatically, like in the past year-ish?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. And I think the reason for that being is that, like I mentioned, he used to play as a winger and now he's been playing as a fullback for quite a few years, I think, at this point. But that defensive side of his game wasn't really blowing anybody away, at least when he first came to Benfica. But throughout this season, he used to provide a lot of value to our attack. He's good at progressing with the ball at his feet. He's a good passer. He can, pass, like play through balls. He's all very good at that, granted, because he's formerly a winger. But this season especially, we've seen him make strides on the defensive end of his game. And he's a left back that's 6'1", so he's a bit taller. And the main thing that I noticed was that he was bullying players, and he uses his speed to catch up to players, but he was bullying them physically and winning a lot of duels. And I think that all of this sort of defensive side of his game, reading the game a little bit better, granted it is the Portuguese league, so it's not the greatest oppositions that he's coming up against. And maybe that helped him sort of develop his reading of the game a little bit, but reading the game better, really coming into himself a bit physically, getting a lot stronger and being able to sort of body players at times. Like there's times, Kiyan, I'm telling you, where he was just like wrestling guys off the ball and just taking it from them and flying up the pitch. So that was one thing that I found was really where he's made the biggest strides, is his defensive side. And like I said, he's 6'1", so even in an aerial duel, he's not someone that you can just automatically think like, okay, he's never going to win it. Like we had with Grimaldo in the past, a diminutive little guy who's all like technique and adds a lot going forward. But when it comes to the defensive side of things, you're a little bit nervous about the back post all the time. So I think that that's where he's sort of made a name for himself, and become a much more attractive sort of proposition, in that his defensive side is now getting closer to his attacking side of the game.
So on that note, and you mentioned Grimaldo there, what do you think he provides for Real Madrid that someone like Grimaldo or even Theo Hernandez doesn't? And also vice versa. Like what would Grimaldo and Theo have over Carreras? And also the things that Carreras doesn't have, is there room to grow for him?
Yeah, so I think that Grimaldo there's very few left backs that have that kind of technique that he does, where he's taking set pieces, he can score from set pieces, he can play in wicked whipped balls in behind defenses. Like his left foot is pretty remarkable. So I feel bad comparing other left backs to Grimaldo, but that's where Grimaldo really has shined for Xabi Alonso, especially, playing as a left wing back is kind of perfect for him, because as time progressed at Benfica, he was seemingly wanting to be more and more up the pitch. So that was perfect for him. We saw him joining in attacks. He's getting into the 18 at Leverkusen at times to finish off attacks. Carreras doesn't do that so much. And even with Theo, Theo always has those roving runs forward where you see him flying up the pitch and then unleashing a wicked strike from the midfield that will trouble the keeper, that just like a bomb of a left foot, right? Carreras doesn't really have that going forward. He is very good at progressing the ball. He can beat players while he's progressing the ball. That's probably what he's best at. He can play in a pass. He's not a bad crosser at all. He's pretty good at it, but he doesn't have that same whipped in kind of technique that those two players do. And I don't know that he has the same sort of dribbling style as Theo, but he does have a higher work rate. Compared to Theo defensively, I haven't seen enough of Theo defensively. I can absolutely say that I trust Alvaro Carreras as he's progressed this season more so than I did with Grimaldo. With Grimaldo, you took the bad with all of the good that he brought, right? It was sort of something that you just had to accept. You're going to be left a little bit shy at the back post now and then, and maybe he's not going to read a play properly, and there's going to be guys running in behind him. But with Carreras, I felt a lot more comfortable defensively, to the point where even in this game yesterday, and I don't recall seeing it very often this season, when we were out of possession against Sporting, who have a very good attack, when we were out of possession against them, Carreras was sort of falling into a back five and playing as a left center back. And he didn't really look out of place at all, the way that he was reading the game, his size, his strength on the ball and everything. So that was something that I found interesting. I can't speak too much on that because it was sort of towards this end of the season because of injuries. He was out there doing that. But I think that defensively, and I know that I've seen a lot of headlines about Theo this season having issues in, hustling back and his work rate and things like that. That's never been an issue with Carreras. Granted, he's spent physically, so it's been harder for him to get back. But defensively, I think that he adds more than Grimaldo. Can't say for sure than Theo without giving up too much going forward.
So obviously, I'm far from a Benfica or Carreras expert. I just have been doing my best to do as much research as possible in the last, week or two, talking to smart people like you, talking to other people who watch the Portuguese league. And this is my conclusion. I feel like your answers today are very helpful, but also confirm a little bit of what I thought heading into this. Because the reason I asked you about Grimaldo and Theo and how he compares to those guys, in some ways, I think Carreras is a safer choice in that Grimaldo, we know that he's a better offensive player. He's also a little bit older, has some defensive question marks. Theo, as great as he can be, had a bit of a down year. He also has defensive question marks. Carreras seems to be like the more well-rounded, two-way, balanced player. And that might be a wise choice for Real Madrid, just in the sense that, as you know, you put out a great video just, I think, a week or two ago about Real Madrid's backline and reinforcements and Housen and Carreras and how Xabi Alonso might play defensively. But a team that has Vinny and Mbappe and Trent. So how many people are you going to have who are just going to be supremely offensive minded, right? At some point you need to balance this. And I remember doing a video with you for your channel like a few months ago about like some of the balance issues that Real Madrid had at the time, right? Would you say then Carreras is out of these three, just it maybe perhaps not a higher ceiling necessarily like as a Theo, but a higher floor, if that makes sense?
Defensively, especially, you're talking about? Or
Yeah,
just in
just
general?
like as a two-way balanced kind of figure who can kind of do both, but not necessarily one or the other at an elite level.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that from what we've seen this past season and the strides that he's made, it's sort of reinvigorated my belief that he can continue to get better. And the fact that he elevated himself to being probably our most trusted player out there. He's one of the guys where when he's on the pitch, you don't really have any worries about the job that he's going to do out there, especially, I think that, which a lot of people saw, was the Lamine Yamal defending sort of things. He really showed that when he's focused on defending these one-on-one situations and reading the game well, he showed that he can really excel in that role if it's asked of him, which I think was really good. And yeah, I think all of the things that you mentioned about sort of the issues that both Theo and Grimaldo may have defensively, he's not going to be this exciting, like, this is the new Marcelo down that left side for you guys or anything like that. But he will add some solidity. And certainly if you're looking at the current options that you have, will he be an upgrade? In my opinion, yes, because he also will continue to improve. I truly believe that. Will he blow you away immediately? Probably not, but I think that he will not look out of place, so to speak, in that left back position for you guys. And like we were saying, he does have more room to grow as well. And I think he can only get better if he continues on this trajectory, which is hard for me to see him from this season just going and plateauing already from where he's been, because we've seen these strides that he made defensively from like this shaky, skinny little kid with funny hair that now he looks like an imposing, tall, strong left back that you have no worries about. That when he was on the pitch, Lamine Yamal didn't have a goal or an assist. So he's certainly evolved well. He needs a rest, but he's certainly a player that I think wouldn't be out of place at Real Madrid currently.
I think what you're describing, like a player who may not necessarily blow you away, but a person you don't need to worry about, is just in some ways just like a perfect player for Real Madrid, because we don't really necessarily need more players that'll blow us away. We need competency in the remaining positions. We need someone who, like, you don't have to waste mental energy about, like, is he doing the right thing? Is he pushing up unnecessarily? Is he giving the ball away? One thing that I wanted to ask you to touch on before we wrap it up here is Carreras' ball playing ability. You mentioned how much he's improved on the defensive end, which is great news, to us, obviously, given how poor Real Madrid have been defensively this year. But with Xabi Alonso, so much is about the build-up phase. And we know, like, for example, Trent Alexander-Arnold fits that perfectly. Dean Howson fits that perfectly. Where do you see Carreras fitting in there, and where would you rate his ball-playing ability?
I think that he's quite good. Again, I've mentioned this a few times, but going back to his history as a winger, he certainly has those technical attributes to be able to play 1-2s, and he makes intelligent runs when we're going forward. He's not going to be the part of the build-up phase that's going to be pinging the ball around, but he's certainly one who can combine well with the midfielders and the wingers down that left flank. You see him joining the attack quite often. And sort of really being a good support role, or someone who can get in behind and help with the attack as well in the box. But I think that when it comes to passing, short, medium, great. Long passing is nothing that I've really been blown away by with him. It's not something that I would really attribute to him as well. But when it comes to just tidy passing, tight areas, combining with the midfielders and the wingers, he's been quite good with that. It's not something that I would ever really worried about with him. He's again, with Grimaldo, it was always, he did that same sort of thing, but with Grimaldo, he had that wicked left foot that he could just spray an incredible pass, perfectly weighted, or he can play a crazy early cross into the box that, no one else on our team could. You don't see those kinds of things with Carreras, but you do see give and goes. You do see combining well and working the ball down the pitch through his ball progression with the ball at his feet. He can beat a few players, kind of thing.
Finally, I'm assuming that this is a big loss for you guys. From a sporting perspective, would you at least say it's a good piece of business?
On our side?
Yeah, just in terms of what you brought him in for, his expectations, and then, you're probably going to get, what, 50, 60 million for this?
Yeah, but then I think United gets like 40% of it, which is the big brutal part. I know, exactly. So without that, if he was to go for 50, 60 million, yeah, I think that would be, without getting too into the inflation type prices,
sure,
I think that would be a, very good business for us. But now with that added 30 to 40% that Manchester United get, and we're probably going to land, let's say, I don't know what you've heard, but I've heard figures around like 40 to 50 million euros. So that means that we get like, what is that, like 20-ish, 25-ish, something like that. Not great. And I think that that's severely, for our part, severely undervaluing what he brought to our team and what he's capable of growing into personally.
Well, hopefully your scouting department can turn that into, 2-3 players that can bring you guys success again. Adrian, I thank you for your time. It's always an honor collaborating with you. Everyone, please go and check out Adrian's channel. It's called Rabona TV. You can't miss it. If you're here, you probably already know about Adrian, but just in case, appreciate your time. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun. We'll do it again sometime.